Well, now we're live.
I'm surprised Google Analytics hasn't integrated with Google Hangouts, so we can see everybody that's watching and where they see all the countries light up around the world.
They're actually going to start adding functions like that for a paid um, Hangout live broadcast system. It's actually kind of neat what they have planned coming down the pipe. They're
Hey,
going to
Peter.
allow. Hi, Peter.
Hey,
Hi,
Al.
Peter.
Evening.
All right,
It's
awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Sure. Glad to be here.
All right, so I guess we're going live now, and Tim's gonna kick us off. Is everybody ready?
Yep,
Ready here.
I'm ready. Alrighty. Hey everybody, it's another DIY show. This is episode 23, and we're talking about 3D printing for prosthetics and biology as it relates to human healthcare and well-being. We've got Ben again. Ben again? No, you're not a restaurant. Ben Harris. He's going to lead the discussion tonight because he's a bit more in tune with the topic than I have been. And we have four great guests with us here. So, hey, Ben, you wanted to cover a little bit of DIY news to begin with.
Yeah, well, we're really happy about things we're doing here in Burlington. We've been working with a school for the last year, Blessed Sacrament School of Burlington. They're a private K-8 school, and they just got their STEM certification from the state of North Carolina, and I'm really proud. They cited working with the Alamance Makers Guild and the Burlington Mini Maker Fair as being their best educational practice. So we're really proud of their accomplishments in STEM education. Also, just finished up the first ever Charlotte Mini Maker Fair in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is actually where I met Chris from Print Human. He had an exhibit right across the room from our Makers Guild exhibit. So a lot of cool things going on in Charlotte. There's a lot of photos and video of that, so check out their website. So that being said, let's kick off the show about 3D printing for human health and well-being. We've got some amazing guests on the call. We've got Chris Ryan from Print Human, also Katie from Print Human. They're going to be talking to us about what they do. We've got Jeff Powell, who's the founder of the Helping Hands Project at UNC. We'll talk to him. And we've got Peter Binkley, who is part of the Enable Project. And I'm going to kick it off to Chris and Katie first. We'll let Chris go first and just tell us what you guys are, what you're doing. And to let everybody know, they've got some sketchy internet connections, so if they fall off, we'll just make do.
So, I'm Chris Human. Chris Human is I'm plugging them from. I was hearing myself talk. Print Human is a biotechnology maker group. We're interested in how the maker movement can be utilized by people that want to do more of a biology-focused project, and it's really and we have a Google Plus community that's about 35 members, and we were really just sharing ideas about how this technology can impact people and how it can impact potentially other facets of our environment, such as veterinary medicine and animal welfare, and even plants, and as well as the aerospace industry with some of the medical tie-ins to what's happening at NASA. So it's an interesting dialogue, and we're excited to be a part of it, and we're excited about really everything that's happening in the makerspace movement, and how our membership and how organizations like ours can engage this exciting new space.
Right. I'm Katie, and I work with Chris and Print Human as well. I have a background in bioengineering, which has led me into bioprinting for my day job. And, you know, we found each other through shared interests, and we're working on developing some entry-level bioprinting and 3D printing technology for the STEM world, kind of going to target, you know, high schoolers, maybe even younger, junior high. So we've kind of gotten in touch with the maker communities and just sort of feeling it out and seeing, you know, who is on board with collaborating with us. And this is kind of one of our first major steps in that. So we're really excited to be here. So thanks for letting us join the call today.
Oh, definitely.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, I'm gonna throw to Jeff Powell now and let him tell us who he is and what he does.
Hey, so I'm a recent graduate of biomedical engineering from UNC Chapel Hill, and I started a group called the Helping Hand Project. We use a lot of the Enable open source prosthetic devices, and then a couple of devices that we make tweaks here and there as needed to get custom prosthetic devices to kids, mostly in our local area, but a couple have stretched beyond that. And then once we get the devices to the kids, we work to get them other assistive devices, and just generally speaking, try to work with them, support them to see that they get the most out of their device, and then also form a support group between the different kids that we've helped out, their families, and then the kids in the project. And we hope that by forming a concise local group at a student group at the university, then we can keep this going, pass down our knowledge from year to year, and make sure that there's always a group that the kids that we've come into contact with can turn to for help as they outgrow or break the devices that we've gotten them.
Cool. All right, so you mentioned Enable, so I'm going to throw to Peter.
Yeah, I work for Enable. I'm a designer and also an educator. So our whole goal at Enable is to make designs and information available to amputees. Now, we mostly provide information and designs for congenital amputees. That is, children who are born missing fingers or missing their hand. We've been working with upper limb, at least so far, but we do our best to connect makers with clients, also with amputees, with information and designs that can help them to make their own devices, or maybe teach their family also to assemble devices. So we have a lot of volunteers who around the world who will print for free for someone who can use one of these devices, and we give them away for free. We give devices away for free to anyone who can benefit from them.
Well, and in spite of them being for free, even so, the material cost to produce one is very low, right? So,
oh, yeah.
So what would be a good estimate of how much printing a hand would cost?
Well, the printed plastic comes out to about $5 or $6.
Yeah.
You have to, there are some other components necessary. There's usually some stainless steel screws, some kind of cabling, and then straps, nylon straps, and that's about it. I use leather in mine, but again, I just use like little pieces of leather. So it comes out to under $50 to make a device for someone. And generally.
And how does that compare? How does that compare to sort of traditional prosthetic?
Oh, there's no comparison. When I and my son made his first device, he was born without fingers on his left hand. So when we made his first device 2 years ago, we bought a 3D printer for $800. And even with the cost of the printer, it's still, just to make a single device, and we've made a lot of devices now, but even just to print a single device, we saved a lot of money. I mean, they're thousands of dollars, and they can get to be very, very expensive, but when you start comparing, an $80,000 device is going to have a lot of technology in it. So it's not really a fair comparison, but it's the difference between thousands of dollars and tens of dollars.
Right. Well, for kids who are going to be active, playing on the playground, swinging from trees, if you wear a hand out with what you guys are doing, you can just print a new one, or
right.
Replacement parts for the one that you have, or as the child grows, you can make new ones. So that's a really cool feature.
Yeah, we just scale them up. When the kid gets a little bigger, then if they outgrow it or if they break something, we print new components. Everything's totally modular. So if they break one finger, we can print the part of the finger that broke, and they can swap it out. Everything goes together with snap pins, so it's very easy for them to make repairs on their own.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do you, if there's people watching this that have a 3D printer and they want to get involved and help out, what do they need to do to work with either you or Jeff to do something about that?
Well, if you want to know more about what we're doing, the best site for news, I would say, is enablingthefuture.org, and that's one word. There's also an Enable Google Plus community, and if you ask to join, then we'll bring you on board, and you can. There's a sign up. So if you join the community, you'll see at the top of the page there's a link for you to get started. If you're a maker volunteer, and then you can, and you already have access to a 3D printer, there's something you can do. If you're looking for a 3D printer, you can go to the forums. Also, Enabling the Future has, the website has recommendations for, if you're looking for a printer, things you should be looking for. They'll get you started. You'll print a test hand before you get a client, and then we look over your test hand and make sure the quality's good and that you understand the assembly process, and then from there you can start working with clients. And now working with clients is not necessarily working with them one-on-one. There exists the possibility to do work for someone remotely. So if a client or their family can take good photos of the affected arm, then we can take those photos and use them. Well, you take a photo and you put a ruler in the field with the photo at the same depth as the arm, and then we can use that image to get the information we need to make a device that fits. And it should fit as well as your shoes fit on your feet. But my first device I made was for my son, and we were together. But my second client was a little boy in Greece who I've never met. I gave his parents instructions for taking photos, and they took a great overhead photo and a side photo, and I used those. I brought them into Blender, which is what I use, but there are other 3D modeling programs that will allow you to import photos, and I was able to model, literally model a device around the image and then print it.
So what is your background prior to doing this? What's your profession?
Well, I've been a foreign language teacher for 15 years. I taught ESL and French, and 3D design is something I just started really 2 years ago when Peregrine and I made his first device. I get up early in the morning and I work. So anybody can do it. YouTube was my teacher, really, and I was able to pick up everything I needed to. Blender has a lot of support. When you first open it up, it's very intimidating. But
oh yeah, it's like the controls of the space shuttle. Yeah.
There are a lot of things you can do with it, so it can be scary going into it. But you start with tutorials. You go to Google, go to YouTube and type in Blender tutorial, and you'll get started. And then pretty soon there will be something specific you want to do, and you can search that too, and it'll teach you how to do it.
Well, cool. Well, I'm going to throw back to Jeff. So tell us about the Helping Hands project and what you founded there, the actual organization.
Yeah, so the organization was founded after I was connected to a local boy through one of UNC's professors, and spent the time to learn all about these open source devices, Enable, 3D printing, the whole nine. Even though I was a biomedical engineering student, it was pretty much my entry into 3D printing as well, and so I kind of figured all that out. And by the end of the process, once I got the hands of this child, just realized that the need was out there to get these to other kids, and to form a group that can stick with these kids as they grow older. So I turned to some of the other biomedical engineering students who had seen what I was doing, and enlisted a couple people who were eager to help, and then the hand project was born. We were lucky enough to be able to get a little bit of publicity from the first hand that we sent out, and then in every time that we had a news story or whatever it may be, we made sure to put our email in there saying if you would like to donate or if you know a kid that could use one of these, then to contact us. And so we're now up to, we've actually been in touch with about 40 kids, and that we're trying to help. Most of them, again, being in the North Carolina area, but we have kids as far as Salt Lake City that we've been in contact with, and it's all been student run. We've raised all the money, all the donations ourselves. Students, come together to teach each other 3D printing, spend long hours in the lab, fleshing out the details and getting these devices made and out to kids.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing thing that you've done as a student. And of course, you've recently graduated. You're out there in the workforce now, but you actually created an organization that's self-sustaining. You made it into a nonprofit. What could have just been a single class project and do this one project turned into something that will help other people. And to me, that's the whole spirit of the maker movement.
Yes, definitely.
So Chris or Katie, Helping Hand is all about sort of a single use case of 3D printing to help people with some specific issues with amputation or they've been born without a hand. What kind of projects are you doing? How are your projects going to be able to help people? What are some specifics?
So Bennett, the principles behind the groups like Helping Hands and Enable the Future actually apply to us as well in terms of the part production and actually making 3D printed body parts, whereas Print Human is more focused on trying to use 3D printers to actually create some type of a physical part which represents a part of the body. And in general, those are divided into two types. And we sort of refer to the NIH 3D Print Exchange, which is a site that we use to share and upload our open source models with people, and through social media and through online communities that are engaging in this type of thing. But we have custom CAD type of models where people are using like Blender to create a part, or they're using obtaining some data from the hospital. Like if you go to the hospital and you stub your toe and you get X-ray or a 3D X-ray, a CT or MRI, or some more sophisticated scan, then that data can be pulled into Blender or your 3D modeling software and printed from your 3D printer at home. So it's also about helping people. So the question I think that is fascinating to me is how do we actually use 3D printed body parts? One of the most common applications I've seen personally is using the 3D print to, particularly ones that are obtained from medical data sets, to help surgeons prepare for cases or to see disease process in such a way where it's like holding the disease in your hand rather than reading it from a textbook. So from an educational standpoint, it's a powerful resource. It's a great visual tool, but with the advent of bioprinting, I'll let Katie provide some thoughts on this, but I think the 3D printing world is getting ready in many ways to see a wave of more accessible printers that could actually create tissue.
Yeah, so some of the things that have been done where you're using a bioprinter to actually, so you start with, like Chris said, the medical file, the DICOM file as it's called, and you convert that into a printable file. So you can actually, if a patient has some kind of a defect in a blood vessel, for instance, you can take that DICOM file and convert it, and then you can print out using biomaterials. You can print out essentially a patch of where the defect is, and then you can go in and replace, essentially you're patching a hole, and over time, because the body regenerates, it'll kind of take, bit by bit some of the biomaterials away, and they will resorb into the body, and it's replaced by actual living tissue. So that's, one example of where we're going with this. So you need to have the 3D capability and the knowledge to be able to do that. Especially the more advanced we get. And then there's other applications where we're 3D printing in titanium and other types of polymers that don't degrade. For a skull and crush injury, where you need to have that structure there. We're not there yet where we can, regenerate the bone. So there's a lot of applications where traditional 3D printing is huge in the medical field, in the meantime, until we can actually get the tissue to regenerate.
So, given this new technology being out there in the medical field, how are existing doctors and other people that work in that field, are they relying on specialists to work with them to do all the 3D printing? Are they learning the technology and the tools themselves? How does
They're typically relying on specialists. There's whole companies springing up that do this stuff, that realize they have the capability and the knowledge and the personnel, and they're saying that this is a huge market, so they offer, the whole sort of package there. I'm sure there's some doctors that are going to, actually dig in and learn this, but for the most part right now it's kind of more outsourced, I would say. But they outsource it, but they also have to customize the software and customize everything. So it's definitely growing exponentially.
Right, and I think if you talk to different clinicians, you might be able to arrive at some commonalities. I mean, I think it would be interesting to talk to one who's very visible in our space is Dr. Mike Itagaki. He has a lot of tutorials of actually using a Blender, an open source software, and he's someone that I've collaborated with. He's very talented and knowledgeable in the field of radiology, and he's certainly engaging a lot of the makers as well as the 3D designer community as well. And I think is a good example of how open source software and non-medical even people that don't have any medical training can actually take this knowledge and see it translate into things that doctors can use, patients can use, and really I think is more about helping humanity and is true to those common principles. But obtaining high quality 3D models is at the heart of what's helping use and communicate, I think, about these 3D models and about the part quality.
There's quite an interesting spectrum between take a photo of your hand with a ruler in the shot to fit a prosthetic from across the world and taking MRI data that's probably a pretty large data set and turning that into something. So that's quite an interesting spectrum there.
Yeah, sure is.
So if
it takes a lot of processing power, right, Chris?
Oh yeah.
So if I go to the doctor, and sometimes now you can get a DVD image of your MRI scan or whatever it is, they'll give you a copy for your records. How can makers listening to this, is there a way they can do something with that data to print out their gallbladder or whatever they'd like, just as a model, is there a way to do that?
Yes, yeah. I would recommend if you have a DICOM data set, just upload that information to the NIH 3D Print Exchange. It is a already existing open source pipeline that has it's very easy to take that CD, that data disk, or card or whatever your data is stored on, and upload that to the NIH site. And then you can convert it to a 3D model. And I would recommend, there's software out there. One free piece that you can download is NViselius. There's also Slicer, and that was, I think, funded through an NIH pipeline. But there's a lot of emerging new tools that really could change the way that process of getting from, what you get when you go to the doctor's office on a disc to that 3D model. There's really a lot of new software approaches, and not all of them are free, or even necessarily similar in how they function. So, I mean, it's a complicated, diverse array of software out there for you to experiment with, and it's really a full-time job. And I think it's going to be interesting what pieces of software are kind of touted as the winner of that, for ease of use, as well as for the medical community that wants that medical grade software for their systems.
What's interesting is that actually there is some documented cases where people without medical backgrounds but engineering backgrounds have used this. Back in January of 2015, Make Magazine ran an article about a man saving his wife's sight by 3D by printing her tumor and giving it to a specialist. And that helped them dramatically. Actually completely saved her eyesight, whereas she was going to lose it. It's amazing what you hear about. I hear what you guys are talking about, and everything I'm thinking of is this is world changing. Every bit of this. 10 years ago, none of this even existed, and now not only do we have new tools that the doctors don't even have in their own hands, but we've got people printing prosthetics for children who can't afford it. And I'm looking at what you guys do with these prosthetics. Third world countries, they can have it now instead of waiting for a first world country or second world country to manufacture it for them and ship it over there. It's absolutely life-changing technology.
That's the whole goal is. I mean, speaking from the Enable standpoint, accessibility is really what it's all about. And so, obviously not everyone has access to a 3D printer, but we do have literally thousands of volunteers who do, and those volunteers will print parts for free, and they'll ship them to really anywhere. So, it makes a lot of sense if there's someone who can use a device in some locality in the world, we can contact someone who's local to them. But also, part of the design goal is to make the other necessary components cheap and ubiquitous. So that's why we're using, screws and cabling and leather and things that are available, worldwide, and very inexpensive. So, yeah, we're hoping to to have a lot of impact, and I think that there's a lot of promise to have a lot of impact. There's I use Blender, and I really promote Blender a lot because largely because it's very capable. It also is free, so anyone can do their own design work if they want to, and it will also run on a pretty crappy computer. As long as you don't have a lot of things going on in it, but you can definitely design yourself a device on an old Pentium 4 that your grandma used to use.
Yeah, we used Blender. It's a wonderful tool for both. I think for us as well, and I promote it as well. I mean, it's really worked wonders. And it's the more time you spend with it, you discover new things every day. We used it to create a hybrid model that was part data and part custom 3D modeled of a complete human that's intended to be able to be 3D printed part by part or layer by layer that's an ongoing project. Certainly, we've had some media from that, some images of our work, and it's it's in the same way that a lot of these like the prosthetics community. Not everybody, not all we call our members are calling them biomakers. I think we're all biomakers, but there's an important role of sharing that's especially between the 3D modeling community and the digital design community and the manufacturing component, because it's just I think it's very important, at least in my experience, to see the test or the proof of concept of your works, to see it 3D printed.
Peter, before we get too far off of what you were just talking about, I've seen, as I'm sure you have, that these 3D printed prosthetic devices that groups like Mind and Enable are making have come so far in the 3-4 years since the first rendition of it was created that there's no telling how far they're going to go in the next 4 years, the next 10 years. Now, we're able to make mechanical prosthetic hands for kids that are a fraction of the cost of what they've traditionally been. Now you have groups out there that are pretty close to perfecting electromechanical versions too, again, at a fraction of the cost. So it's just really, really great to see what the maker movement, the open source community is doing.
So right now it seems we're kind of in a wild west with a new frontier of activity and people doing great things. Is there going to come a point where government agencies are going to say, oh, wait a minute, we need to regulate this, we need to have rules or laws, or how are you using it's something that's for human beings? I mean, granted, a model of something is different, a prosthetic hand is different, but at what point does government get involved? Well, that's a tough question. Nobody wants to jump.
Well, sure.
Well, go ahead.
Okay. Well, so far we have. Well, of course, there's the NIH, National Institutes of Health, but also the FDA have been very supportive of what Enable is doing, and of course, we're making Class 1 medical devices. These are external. They're prosthetics. They're mechanical prosthetics. So there's not really a lot of danger associated with it. Generally speaking, medical devices, in order for them to be sold, well, I shouldn't say generally speaking, without exception, in order for them to be sold, they need to have FDA approval. Now, we've managed to get around that because we're not selling them. And when you give them away, you can call them experimental devices, even if they're pretty well developed. So that's kind of the loophole that we're functioning within. But I do see the potential for commercial versions of what we're doing, and like when I publish GNU GPL, which does allow commercial use. So someone could, if they wanted to, they could sell these devices too. They might have a hard time competing with free, but it does make for that possibility. But I don't think anybody really knows how to deal with what's happening, and it's not just 3D printing. There's a lot of stuff going on that's just an explosion of capability. We've got basically patients who are instructing their doctors, or giving their doctors like revelations about how they can solve their medical problems. And I was a foreign language teacher before this, and many people consider me to be kind of at the cutting edge of this field, and I started 2 years ago. So anybody can do like anything these days. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I was going to say in the bio world, it's in the bioprinting world, it's definitely very tricky. It's all this stuff is R&D phase right now. I think there might be some kind of clinical trials going on using bioprinting. Maybe more just to compare the results to the way things are done now, but that's definitely a huge hurdle. If the commercial applications right now are in testing in the drug world, testing toxicity or efficacy of new compounds against the bioprinted tissue. And that it's going to be a long time before that is FDA approved, and that can replace animals or humans in these studies. So right now it's definitely very early, and I know the FDA is working with particular groups, but a lot needs to be figured out, because we still don't really know how to print certain types of tissue, and tissue in itself is super complex, made up of lots of different cell types and other factors, and so it's it's definitely an uphill battle, but I think it's one. If these companies work with the FDA rather than go too far down the rabbit hole and then realize they need to sort of satisfy some of these requirements. I think if they work together sort of proactively, then that'll be the way to approach it.
And I'll just add one quick thing to follow up on what Katie's saying. Another aspect of that's important to think about is how is this technology viewed by the public and viewed by those policymakers who are potentially going to enact or remove important pieces of regulation that could change the way that things are done. From a public health standpoint and just from public knowledge, one thing that there's still a need for is and critically so are organ donors. And so one potential concern I heard voiced at the National Science Festival in January, I believe it was by one of the FDA commentators, who said it's just a problem could really come from if a public view that organ donation is somehow no longer necessary and they don't register as an organ donor. So that's still going to be important.
Good point.
Yeah.
Or just in general, people need to start the Frankenstein scenario.
Yeah, I was going to say Frankenstein.
Yeah, I just worry about, we were talking about this with drones the other day in a meeting. Drones in and of themselves are just a technology. They're no more dangerous or safe than anything else. It's all in how you use them. And at that meeting, we were saying, yeah, no, you don't need to be registered. You don't need anything. And the very next day, oh, guess what? Here's the new rules. All drones have to be now registered. So I think education is key, just so the public understands what this is. So that's my next question, is to any teachers or school administrators out there listening to this, what can they do to prepare their students for this world of 3D printing and open source software and bioprinting and all these new technologies? Because if you think about where we are now, somebody that's in middle school now, where is the world going to be in 10 more years?
I think exposure is the main thing. Simply getting a 3D printer in the classrooms, I think, can go a long way. One, to show these kids a lot of negative things that people may think come with I know when 3D printing was first coming out, there was the whole scare that people were going to use them to make guns, and look what their main use is for now. It's for prosthetic devices, for at-home projects, for very positive things. So just getting devices like these to the kids, letting them see what they're like, letting them play around with them, and also kind of learn what they can do with them, so that they can start thinking about how they can take these technologies, use them for a positive action, and then add to them and add to the open source community that has developed.
Definitely.
That's a good point.
What about for the biology side of things, Chris or Katie?
Well, Chris and I, we met today with Discovery Place Museum in Charlotte, and we actually were kind of touching on this. And you know, right now, like you guys noted earlier, it's kind of the wild, wild west, and so that obviously means there's no core curriculum around this stuff. There's all these concerns that, oh no, when you play with cells, some virus might get loose, or all these crazy things that people think might happen or could happen that very rarely do happen. And there's you're working with cells, they're really not scary. But yeah, I think part of it is educating teachers, and so places like Discovery Place, they have workshops where teachers can come in and learn how to, for 3D printing, they can come in, take a course, learn how to do 3D printing, and then they actually keep the 3D printer, and then they can take it back to their school and teach children. However, I just don't know that it's part of the core curriculum. So I think right now where it stands is it's a little bit of an extracurricular type approach, where this is more that people are interested in it and they're going to pursue it, rather than they're being taught it because it's part of their electives or their core courses in school.
I think that's going to change over time, though. I think just like if you flash back to the 1970s, suddenly the school got their first Apple II. Well, right now schools are getting their first 3D printer, and I think over time there's going to be one in every classroom. It's just a matter of funding and adoption and training the teachers and training the public. So,
yeah, and I think an important tie-in is really kind of the literacy. As the literacy increases, or really as a society across the world begins to have a greater public understanding of 3D printing technologies, it does make that conversation easier in some ways. I think you could make that case of really explaining what bioprinting is. I think there are a lot of differences. I mean, and Katie was pointing out some of the nuances that are important to have a really full understanding of that topic. But I think for kids in classrooms, the key question is: do we want them? I mean, our policymakers and people that have strong feelings about this, do people want them around living material? And my personal opinion is, well, we're always going to be around living material. So I think there's an enrichment that could come from that, and potentially, especially with plant material. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of controversy about using plant materials or materials that were obtained through a natural source. And are cells really going to be any different? Do those things even really fit into Common Core curricula in the scope of what is going to happen in the classroom? Probably not. But once you're familiar with the 3D printer, when you go out into the workforce or into these, one day I think we'll want to prepare our learners to be able to contribute and work with these technologies at a greater scale, so that we can yield the maximum benefit from the technology and what this stuff can do.
Also, one more thing. Bioprinting is really just 3D printing of soft material. So, you can take out the cellular aspect of it, and you're working with what we call biomaterials, which does not mean it has an actual living component. A lot of these are commercially available, FDA-approved materials. So, you can still teach a lot of the principles. It's all just kind of fluid mechanics and dynamics at that point.
that's a really good point.
And they're sterile, like Jell-O.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's like the same as 3D printing with food. I mean, it's pretty much you're doing the exact same thing.
Now, are they doing the 3D printing of like lattices for growing? Like, let's say when they try to grow an ear, Are they using 3D printing to print the lattice for the biology to grow on?
Yeah, actually, they're using, a lot of them are using a thermo-melted plastic. Usually it's a biodegradable one, but it's essentially the same as a, filament polymer that you guys use for normal 3D printing. That's pretty much the exact same thing.
One of the stories from the White House the week of making this year, the president declared a week of making, June 12th to June 18th. One of the speakers was a 10-year-old boy that had worked with some folks as mentors to learn 3D printing. He was missing his arm from just below the elbow down, and the interesting thing with him is he printed an arm, but his first prosthetic hand was not a human hand, but it was a Lego hand. And he went from there to then having a Lego hand that had the studs on it so he could plug other Legos onto this module and make anything he wanted out of it in real time. And his next project was then to say, okay, I'm going to make a Super Soaker hand so I can go play Super Soaker. And the greatest story of all, and what I'm about to ask everybody to do is tell me your one greatest story of what you've encountered in doing what you do. But this was his greatest story. He was 10 years old, and at his school they started doing band in that grade, and he wanted to play violin, and they told him, well, I'm sorry, you're missing an arm, you can't play violin. So he thought, I'll show you, and his next arm was a bow for a violin. And, so now he's playing violin. And so
I'm kind of jealous of that.
I know, right? So there's a lot of great opportunities, but that was such a great story. One other quick story, there was a doctor at the White House that talked about a patient, I don't remember the name of the disorder, but his windpipe, he was 14 and his windpipe was collapsing on itself. It was a genetic defect, and as he grew, it sort of was collapsing, and he had become paralyzed because of low oxygenation of his blood, and the doctors basically said, okay, the kindest thing is to pull the plug. And the doctor said no, and he used the MRI data. Another surgeon came in and he used the MRI data, and he created a stent that used principles of origami, and it used a biomaterial that would degrade over about 10 years. And they inserted this, and so therefore it's able to move, it's able to grow as the child continues to grow. He recovered from his paralysis, and he's expected to live as long as you or me now, all due to the power of 3D printing. So that's my story. I'm gonna go first to Jeff, because you guys might want to think a little bit. But Jeff, what's your great story?
Oh man, I don't think I really have one outstanding story. Mine is just the small things. Having the meetings that we've had with kids and getting them their first device and just seeing them put the thing on immediately, and before we can start to tell them how to use it, they're closing the thing back and forth. It's getting the updates from the parents in the student group, or the parent group. We have a Facebook group, and they'll just update with a picture of their child using the arm in playtime to pretend they're a superhero, or taking it to school and just being happy to show off this device that's on their hand and not being afraid of their condition. So again, I don't have one big event that I can say, but just the little day-by-day things just mean a lot to me.
That's awesome. All right, Peter, how about you?
I would say pretty much the same thing. Really, what we're doing. Children who wear these devices, they walk taller. I think children who are born with limb differences, at some point they start to become self-conscious that they're different, and when they meet new people, sometimes they'll hide their difference. They'll put their hand in their pocket, or they'll kind of hold it behind their back, or they can pull their sleeve over their hand. But when you give them something that's in their favorite colors and looks like a superhero hand, or like something else, it doesn't even have to look like a hand. It could be this big Lego thing. Now they have something that they can show, and actually that you or I can't even wear. So in a way, it's something it celebrates their difference, and it makes their difference into something that gives them, in fact, special powers. My son, it was kind of a discovery for him. And he's an adult, but he's excited about the fact that he's got a biological hand and a robot hand, and he can grab things that would otherwise burn him. He can, if there's a falling a log or a board that's like 200 pounds, you wouldn't put your hand under that to catch it because it would smash every bone in your hand. But he can put his robot hand in there, and it probably won't break. But if it does, it's not a problem because he can print a new one. He can pull blackberry brambles out of the garden like with his bare robot hand. So it's cool, it gives them something. The point is that the possibilities are endless. We think about giving them, people think that we're allowing them to do things that the rest of us can do, but that's not it at all. They're doing things we can't do. So anyway, that's my big.
We once got a hand to a child, or one of these prosthetic hands to a child, and his brother, who has two full biological hands, turns and goes, "Can I get one?" So yeah, the kids are really responding well to these devices.
And on that same note, I mean, just it's the watching kids like interact with the print. In our case, we're not these 3D parts are not being integrated into the pages. They're not, we're not making parts that are being used medically, but really just the way that we 3D printed a full heart, and basically took some neon food colors when we were at the Charlotte Mini Maker Fair, and kids were getting to learn circulation by actually seeing sort of plug in the arteries and then actually run a system of pumps that we had set up, and actually could see the heart light up. And it's amazing how quickly they were able to find their way around the heart, and really just have a lot of fun with our activities. It is going to be interesting for us to. We're having a conversation now with a veterinary school. We're going to talk to them tomorrow. I'm interested to see if what stories the bioprinting world will have, and how the makers and how people that are doing this already, perhaps within our shared community, what kind of applications there may be in the future.
Definitely. Maybe we'll inspire somebody tonight.
Is it my turn?
Yes, your turn.
It's a tough one in the bio world. I think right now where we are in the industry, it's so early, but to me it's seeing some of the things, the researchers I work with, seeing some of the things they've been able to do, it just all reinforces the fact that biology is fascinating. We're essentially taking a 3D printer, you put a syringe on it, and instead of printing out your filament, your plastic, you're printing out cells. And if you can print out cells in the correct way, they will self-assemble, and they will, essentially start functioning on their own. And you don't even, you have to be accurate, but you don't have to be nearly as accurate as you think. And it's just, there's a certain order, and there's a certain, if you get it within a certain amount of, close enough to the next cell, they will naturally fuse, and biology takes over. And that's what is just fascinating to me. It's like, our equipment, it's not really that special, but it's like magic happens. So that's kind of my takeaway from it, the most powerful thing to me.
Yeah, I only just recently, as in this week, realize what was going on with bioprinting on the desktop 3D printer level. I was pretty amazed, even with what I knew about 3D printing. I didn't expect that it could be done with a hacked desktop 3D printer. So I'm pretty excited too to see where this can go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ditto.
So we're getting toward the end of our hour, right, Tim?
Absolutely. Actually, we've only got a few minutes left.
All right. Well, maybe folks would like to tell us a website or how people can get in touch with you, or how people that want to pursue this and learn more, how they can get started. We'll start with you, Katie.
Okay. I do have my own website. It's just myname.com. I just kind of have started compiling some notes, and I'm trying to keep a blog of things I'm doing. I'm not really good at doing it regularly, but I do, I think I like to take, in fact, in my car right now I just picked up a sample from a customer, and they printed out like part of a vessel. So I like to take pictures and videos of things that I'm actually doing firsthand, and it might or might not make sense to people, but it's kind of my record keeping. So you can go to that or just LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect with people and love hearing ideas and collaborating. So definitely an open book. So please feel free to get in touch.
So is that katiegolson.com? Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. It's just KATIE and then GOLSON.com.
Okay, great.
And for Print Human, we just launched our website at printhuman.org, and we're going to post a lot of resources there. The best way to engage the Print Human and get involved in with our biomakers is to join our Google Plus community. We're about 38 members right now, and we have some shared membership with some of the other great organizations that were here this evening. And you can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/printhuman. And definitely check us out.
Cool. How about you, Peter?
Well, eNable is a couple of years old now. So we have the Google Plus community. You can request to become a member, and you'll become a member. They'll let you in, and you'll get a lot of information, a lot of how to get started with making assistive devices, and you'll see a lot of people posting stories about what they're doing on the front. Of course, there's also enablingthefuture.org, and that's all one word, enabling the future. And that's a great site for. They have a lot of resources and a lot of articles. You can see the devices that we have available, and also 3D printer recommendations. But just a lot of stories about what people are doing around the world with 3D printing of mechanical assistive devices. That's and I'm my handle most places is profbink, PROFBINK, and you'll see me on Thingiverse, so you can see my designs, but you can also find them through eNable.
Awesome.
Oh, and we're eNable's like 6,000 members strong now, but we're a couple years old, so it's growing like every few days. It's like 2% bigger.
Awesome.
So the website for the Helping Hand Project is helpinghandproject.org, and that's singular hand, helpinghandproject.org. And our email is up there. You can reach me at helpinghandprojectnc@gmail.com, and we'd love to hear from anyone who has a story to tell. We'd love to connect with any kids, whether in our area or beyond.
Well, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, and one other thing, if we are looking to get involved in some prizes, there are some prizes out there. I would definitely encourage you to check them out. New Oregon is one of them that we're trying to at least have a collaborative involvement into 3D bioprint deliver. So if you're interested in being on our team's bid to be on this project, it's Chris at printhuman.org, and I can definitely share where we are, and there might be some potential there to get involved through the challenge world in this.
Well, and I'm hoping to get all of you guys involved in next year's Burlington Mini Maker Fair on April 23rd. I've already talked to a couple of you about this, but so you may have a chance to come meet these guys in person there and put some hands together and see some demonstrations and do some really cool things. One other quick plug is for something called SwitchPoint. This is where I met Peter and his son this year. SwitchPoint is a maker conference for the healthcare world. They do a lot of things with the third world and creating devices and mechanisms and using big data and doing all kinds of interesting new things to help people all over the world, and it's sort of a maker healthcare oriented thing. That's in Saxapahaw, North Carolina, and it's next year it's the week before our Maker Fair again. So check out SwitchPoint online if you want to learn other cool maker healthcare things.
It's an awesome experience. It's unlike any conference I've ever been to. Really unbelievable.
This has been amazing, everybody. I knew what was that there was a movement going with 3D printing and biology prosthetics, but I did not realize it was going as far as what everybody here presented. Makes my accomplishment of hacking a light bulb today seem a little lower, but this was just and I know this is just the tip of the iceberg about the entire subject of either prosthetics or bioprinting or even 3D printing for diagnostics. I can't wait to see what happens as things move forward. It's an amazing. It's moved faster than I've seen any other technology of meshing two different worlds.
Definitely.
So,
hey, thank you for having us. Thanks for really working to put this together.
Oh, thank you. I want to thank everybody. We are out of time tonight, so I want to thank everyone for joining us. Tonight's subject was absolutely fascinating, and I'm going to be searching and reading a whole lot more about it. It's been great having every one of you on the show. The DIY show is part of the AV Nation Network. You can find more podcasts such as AV Week and Red Band Radio and more at avnation.tv. That wraps up another show. See you next time.